or kill you. Well, a law that's unconstitutional is null and void, Marbury versus Madison. What this represents is capital controls. When governments start to collapse throughout history, they always try to clamp down on people leaving the country with money. Bottom line, the IRS is the collection agency for the private Federal Reserve. Pre-1913, dollars that were fiat were backed partially by silver and gold and said United States note on them. After 1913, they said Federal Reserve note. In '63, Kennedy reissued $5 bills that said United States note on them, and he signed an executive order to begin the abolishment of the private Federal Reserve and its collection agency of the IRS. That's why the banksters killed him. My point is, yes, a country has to have taxes, but these aren't taxes. These are levies to private international banks. Just as Europe admits they're now under Goldman Sachs dictatorship. Not through money they owe. Goldman Sachs got their governments to sign on to the derivative fraud they created. This is so incredible. And now the banksters are saying, if you don't pay all the taxes we want directly into our private coffers at the Federal Reserve, outside of a court, outside of a conviction, outside of law, we're going to put you on a no-fly list. Just like Rahm Emanuel, former chief of staff at the White House, said at a gun grabber meeting. He said, look, if you're on a no-fly list, over 2 million Americans are on that, by the way, you're not going to be able to buy a gun.
That is, if you are on the no-fly list because you are known as maybe a possible terrorist, you cannot buy a handgun in America.
One of the things you don't know about is the number of people that we have turned away because their name has been on the watch list or on the no-fly list.
Only my mom could, but not me and my dad, because both me and my dad are on the watch list.
Now they say they want to expand that to where if you haven't paid your taxes, you can't buy a gun. Of course, these are taxes to the IRS, and they just say you haven't paid. The bankers are taking control of our lives. They are squeezing Europeans with the exact same system. This is hardcore fascism. This is incredible tyranny, and we've got to defeat this legislation that is now in the House. Get these articles and get them out to everybody and demand that the corporate whore dinosaur media cover this, because these are internal checkpoints, internal passports, and they're saying they're going to revoke your citizenship. That's what this does. Extrajudicially. This is off the Richter scale when it comes to despotic, oppressive tyranny. The Federal Reserve is engaged in a total coup d'etat over due process and threatening to revoke our citizenship and pull our passports if we don't fully submit to the bankers. The bankers are pressuring local governments to raise the local property tax that we didn't have till 60 years ago in this country, that turns your property into basically a government rental. Hi. This is going to be an incredibly jam-packed next 2 hours. You've already heard the first hour of the worldwide broadcast going out on over 115 AM and FM affiliates, global shortwave, WWCR, and XM, channel 166. So that's what's being broadcast and transmitted. Streaming, you can listen at Infowars.com and Prisonplanet.com on this Thursday, August 16th, 2012 edition. There are thousands of articles, thousands. NBC News, you name it. Megadeth's Dave Mustaine says Obama is behind deadly shootings. And my name's been brought into this because he talked about the fact that he thinks the president's a criminal and a liar a few weeks ago on the show. I just interviewed Dave Mustaine. That's why we aired a few of our special reports the last 15 minutes. I just went over to the TV side and did the interview with Dave. And it's a video interview. He's on the phone. It's video. We're transferring it over. It's about 5 minutes long. We will air it here on the radio, probably right before we go to movie star and TV star and researcher Richard Belzer, who has written Dead Wrong, Straight Facts on the country's most controversial cover-ups about government shooting people and staging it and blaming patsies. Isn't that funny? We had this guest set up 2 weeks ago. Jesse Ventura wrote the foreword. Here's the deal. Operation Northwoods calls for shooting people in movie theaters and on the streets and blaming political enemies. Operation Gladio, hundreds of bombings and shootings in Europe carried out by NATO. partially declassified. The Italian government completely declassified it, blowing up school buses, shooting people, bombing theaters, shooting up churches, shooting up police stations to blame their political enemies, whether they be left or right wing. If the groups weren't controlled by the globalists, didn't want the bankers to take over like they've done now, you get a bombing or a shooting. Dave Mustaine has come out and said, hey, if they'd stage Fast and Furious, they'd stage this. We got to look at it. Said at a concert overseas. And we've been talking on the phone lately about this, the Sikhs president saying he saw multiple, people casing it, witnesses all saying 4 shooters. That's what was reported. We need to look at this. We'd be idiots if we didn't. It's time to stop trusting the system. Now, I'll tell you, this is breaking. Just like with the Dixie chicks saying they didn't agree with the war. They're trying to cancel his tours. They're trying to persecute Dave Mustaine right now. Like Chick-fil-A, even if you don't agree with what Chick-fil-A did, you've got to support the First Amendment with these bullies. Guy went in and shot up the Family Research Group, the Family Research Council yesterday with a bunch of Chick-fil-A stuff saying he was mad at them. Okay, these are terrorists. You've got to support the First Amendment. And we will have that exclusive Dave Mustaine statement coming up. Quite frankly, he said stuff after the Batman shooting in an interview we taped after the show one day, and I didn't even air it because I didn't want this big controversy, even though I knew in the end he'd come out smelling like a rose. I just don't like my friends having this stuff happen to them on my show. It's happened a lot of times. But they're going to come after him, folks. They're going to come after him. They didn't go after Larry Pratt because he's a Fox News contributor. That doesn't fit into their whole game plan. They think he's a good target. And now we're going to talk about the economy, the accelerating world events with the premier trends forecaster joining us via video Skype right now. He is Gerald Celente for the balance of the hour. And there's so much I want to get into. I mean, there is so much that I want to break down. They look like they're about to dump Biden right now. That's the writing on the wall. We'll get his take on that. We have got just amazing stuff. Federal courts ruling that cell phone tracking is legal, just throwing out the Fourth Amendment. They're saying they're going to raid the Uruguayan. They're saying the Ecuadorian, the Ecuador, teleprompter free, folks. The embassy, which is just incredibly illegal because they're going to try to give him political asylum. Just amazing the type of evil we're seeing. Ecuador grants asylum to WikiLeaks Assange. All of that and all the big articles. In fact, I left it in the studio from last night. Will you guys bring me all the financial crash stuff? You've been called a pessimist porn dealer, Gerald Celente of the Trends Journal, for predicting with precision everything that's happening, the wars, the Tea Party years before it came, the attacks on small businesses, the rebellion, the meltdown of derivatives, that we were really in a depression and never left the recession. All of that confirmed. They're saying, get the banks ready for collapse. The elites are all buying gold up. That was in the news. Soros, the rest of them. Literally everything you've said. But you don't get praised by the corporate prostitutes, you invented that word, for telling the truth. You get even more demonized as it all unfolds. So you've told us what's coming. Tell us, and it's come true, tell us what's coming now, Gerald Celente.
What's coming now, unfortunately, looks like our worst scenario forecast that we've made recently. And that's the first great war of the 21st century. And people refuse to put the pieces together. Whether it's what's going on in Syria is very clear. This is a move to limit the power of Iran and Hezbollah. People forget that Israel lost against Lebanon in that last war. And one of the reasons why was they were getting armaments from Iran and Syria. The other issue, of course, is when you move beyond that, there's a revolution going on in Yemen, and they're very concerned because Yemen backs up to Saudi Arabia, which, as everyone knows, is the greatest oil producer on the planet. And the people there are very unhappy, and I know that this may sound contrary to all those fairy tales that we're all taught as little boys and girls. They don't like the king. The king. How about calling him a dictator? Oh, no, he's a king. Hey, ladies, you want to free Afghanistan, right? I hear all that all the time. You can't drive a car in the kingdom. So you have a revolution going on there that's spilling over. Bahrain is ready to go up in flames. Greece is cooked. You have an unemployment rate of over 25%, just officially, and then youth unemployment over 50%. You see what's going on in Spain. They don't report the millions of indignados that are taking to the streets it's turned back. You know how I talk about, Alex, that the timelines are parallels to the crash of 29, the Great Depression, the currency wars, trade wars, World War, the panic of 08, the Great Depression / Great Recession, currency wars are going on, the trade wars and world wars. Spain, to just play back into that, it's a replay almost of the 1930s. Just the names and the situations have changed. The people are in Franco-era depression levels. Oh, and then over there in France, yeah, they just got a new president over there. And you read the language in the toilet paper of record, the New York Times, the self-proclaimed paper of record. They have a little story in there about the riots going on in France. And do you know who's rioting? Hey, those people from when they used to, remember those French used to take over Algeria, Morocco, and then all those people came over to France? Yeah, them. And you know who them is? Them are the 50% of the youth unemployment demographic. It's unemployment worldwide. You know my saying. When people lose everything and have nothing left to lose, they lose it. They're losing it around the world. The war has begun. I read your website, and I see what you're posting on there about the hollow point bullets. We all know about the National Defense Authorization Act, about all the armaments going into our military police, because now they've both become one with the National Defense Authorization Act and the repeal of the 1878 Passe Comitatus Act that allows the military to take over police duties. So yes, the whole thing is collapsing. And now, of course, we gotta run. Gotta go after Iran. And what are the reports out? I'm not making this up. This is coming out of Israel. They're preparing the people for a 30-day war. What psychopath came up with this idea? 30 days? Oh, you could put a timeline on it, huh? They're nuts. They're out of their minds, and they're taking the people to war. In the meantime, let's go look at some economic data. Oh, China. You know what China's export numbers were last month? How about 1% growth? Virtually nothing. Their imports were only 4%. You look at Brazil, they just announced a $66 billion stimulus program. The real is crashing. The Indian rupee is in the toilet, and they're trying to stop people from buying gold. Oh, and you mentioned that Soros and Paulson are buying up tons of gold. Oh, but they're brilliant. When Celente says it, oh, he's a gloom and doomer. Oh, you can't eat gold. Oh, you can't eat gold? How about shoving this? Oh, no, I have to be clean. This is a chill.
Gerald, speaking of that, let me throw this at you. As you know, the Associated Press reported, because I know you're a news hound, you'll know this, reported yesterday that Chinese government has suspended all purchases of U.S. stocks, saying the system can't be trusted. And just last week, they had articles admitting that the flash trading is such a manipulation, stealing billions a day, that you can't even trust the market. It's totally rigged.
Only an imbecile. Not only an imbecile, only the people that would vote for Romney and Ryan or Biden and Obama are too stupid enough, too blind, and too ideological to admit the entire system is rigged. The last time we're talking about the LIBOR scandal. Oh, what's a LIBOR? Oh, yeah, what's a LIBOR? It only controls all the money that's being created, and interest rates. Oh, that's all it is, and it was rigged. And as you pointed out, the high frequency trading. Yeah, the game is rigged. Each